Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and it's only been a month between drinks, but a very special welcome back to the podcast, Mr. St.John Craner, all the way from Hawke's Bay in New Zealand. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Darren. Good. Wow. You invited me back. I'm amazed.
Well, we did because the first conversation, I think, when I launched it, it was about 38 minutes, and we predominantly talked about self-leadership in
Yeah.
that particular episode. But there was so much more to talk about, and particularly where you specialize in rural sales, and you've got a global reach, there's so much more to cover off in sales, and even doing justice within an hour wouldn't be right today. But we're going to try and pack as much in as we can,
Absolutely.
and I'm going to make an assumption, Sinjin, that people have listened to the previous episode and they know a bit about your background. So
Yeah.
if they
Cool.
haven't, I'm going to make sure they go back and listen to that before they listen to this one.
Cool.
But mate, there's so much to talk about. We did talk about self-leadership, but the one thing I wanted to talk to you first is this concept of sales and
Yeah.
selling,
Yeah.
and why we have a problem at the moment with sales. Because we've just got off a bit of a conversation around some previous experiences with some podcasts you've been on,
Yeah.
and people not necessarily being aligned, having the right conversation and listening. And when you look at sales, particularly in the world that you specialize in, where do you think the biggest problem is right now?
People just selling too much. So I think the problem with sales is selling.
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple answer. I think in order to cut through, it's not something you do to someone, it's something you do with people. And I know that's trite and repeated, but I think we talked in the previous podcast or a conversation around serve to sell. And the
Mm.
more you serve, the more you sell. And there's a generosity. We talked about that before we came on here. And I think generosity is your best strategy. And like I'm just going to go straight into whiz bang mode here because I'm going to dazzle you with some stuff that we've got the brain here, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist or a neuroscientist to work out the basics of middle, back and front, or I should say back, middle, and front. And so when it comes to sales, if we are coming across as a salesperson, we're going to appeal to the back of the brain, which is that
Yeah.
reptilian brain, right? And so you can, for the listeners that are watching this, it's a back of brain response. And it's very easy to read people's minds because they just actually touch the back of the brain. They touch their head where they are. So they go like this and they're frustrated. So they're soothing literally their amygdala, their back of the brain. And then what we want to do, Darren, is, as you know, we want to get them in the middle part of the brain, the feel part of the brain, and then we want them to get them to the front of the brain, which is the top of the brain called obviously prefrontal cortex. But to keep
Mm.
it simple for listeners, there's a think brain at the top, there's a feel brain in the middle, and there's a fear brain at the back. And then what we do here is we go, oh, surprise, surprise. So if I sound like a sales rep and I sound like everyone else, I get treated like everyone else. And it's when you walk into Harvey Norman or whatever your hardware or electric store, and they pounce on you,
Yeah.
you're gonna recede, you're gonna withdraw, and you're gonna go in the back of your brain. So it's an animal behavior, and it's the oldest primal biological part of the brain, and it's the most powerful. So that's where sales reps stay stuck in the back of the brain. And I can
Mm.
tell you right now, people don't buy in the back of their brain. Now,
No.
I don't have like a MRI scanner here in my office because they're too expensive, but I've read enough books and spoken to enough people about where different parts light up different parts of the brain and the electrical current and the circuitry. But basically, the middle of the brain is what we call the buyer assistant. And I think I might have mentioned this on the first episode, but I'm going to mention it again because it's very
Mm.
important. You need to be a buyer's assistant in today's world because selling is about buying and buying is all about deciding. And when you strip down, the fundamental truth is when people make a purchase is a decision-making purchase. So
Mm.
what they want to do is you and I literally crap our dacks, so to speak, if we make bad decisions, particularly if it's at high stake, high items. So you want someone who isn't going to sell to you, who is going to serve you, make you feel safe, put you in the middle part of your brain, and be the buyer's assistant. I'm sure you and I have bought things that are more expensive based on the sales experience of the person that was guiding us through that process, going, hey, Darren, I think based on this, what you've told me, based on the fact that you're buying this for this situation that's going to be outside, it's going to have a lot of sunlight on it, etc., we should be looking at this model. And
Mm,
so you then automatically feel safe, and then you then become, over time, if I'm a buyer's assistant, over time I get a compounded time, I become a trusted advisor. Because this is a really important, again, this neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio, beautiful book called De Secretis Error. And this is studying patients who literally lost the limbic or the middle parts of their brain, the emotional center of their brain. And what they
yeah,
worked out is they can't, there was this patient called Elliot, and I believe his brain's still in formaldehyde. He's not around, but he was an old fella, not his real name, obviously, and he was about 80, 82, and he had a brain cancer, and they had to take out part of the middle part of his brain, the limbic part of his brain, which
yeah.
is responsible for emotions and feelings and processing. And so he was an old fella. He could remember. This isn't something I'm making up. You can read the book. He could remember where he lived, what his wife's name, his grandkids. He could walk the dog, go to the shop, knew his school, knew where he wanted to go, walk around, anything else. When they try to ask Elliot to make a decision about the next, couldn't make a decision, just even
Okay.
literally save his life. So his brain was one of the most studied brains in the world, which is why he's so famous in medical circles. He had a battery of tests on his brain. And so Antonio Damasio was involved in this. And I'm going to read it slowly because it's quite cryptic. But he says, we are not thinking machines that feel, we are feeling machines that think, which then validates what we've been talking about is people buy emotionally, justify rationally. So you've
Yes.
heard that said, you say it, I say it. That's the neurological reason why, because basically people then go back and forward in their brain, and you've got to be aligned with that and watch where they're going. And, that's obviously just a tiny bit of what we teach.
That's that's fascinating because I know that uh I used to always recite JP Morgan, and he used to always say people buy emotionally and rationally, right? So about 70-30, 80-20,
Mm,
depending on
mm.
Pareto if it works out. But and when you think about your own experiences, most of the bigger decisions we've probably made would have a high degree of emotion, but particularly males, and hands up in the air, we do justify that logically.
Yes,
And
very
so
much
when
so.
you translate that to then what we do in terms of sales and running sales teams,
Yeah.
we've got to try to create an environment where customers feel comfortable,
Yeah.
but they feel as if they've got to make a decision that's going to help them and further their own business or their own situation, and therefore make that decision. But
Yeah.
if we're stuck in the reptilian brain and we're
Perfect.
using the sales process and battering the customer with all the features
Yeah.
of our product,
Yeah.
it's like
100%.
that's where we're going to get all the rejection.
Yeah, 100%. And this feature creature verbal vomit, shark throat doesn't work. That's what we call them. And we also know why people do that. They'll overcompensate because they think sales is somehow below their sense of self-worth. But the
Mm,
thing is, if you have a product that you know can improve your client's condition, you have a noble right or authority to sell it. But of course, we don't sell, we serve. So, you know, when you use the word comfortable, I wouldn't be semantical. I think it's the same thing. There's another sort of 1980s textbook sales thing. People buy from people that they know, like, and trust. Okay. And everyone's obsessed about this trust equation and
yes.
trusted advisor. Well, I'm sure you have a nickname from your mates, and I do too, but we will save that from the listeners. You don't get to call yourself a trusted advisor. You are
No.
granted that. It is entitled, or it's not entitled, it's earned.
Bestowed upon you.
Yeah, and what I mean is when you're saying comfortable, in order for someone to trust you, before they can trust you, they need to feel safe with you.
Mm,
And so we talk about psychological safety and signaling bias safety through non-assumptive selling. And basically, selling has nothing to do with selling, which is right back to our first point.
yeah. And I love the fact that you've said we don't sell, we serve.
Mm.
Now that when you and you probably experience this when I talk to sales teams and people who are not in sales, but I ask them the question, who loves to be sold to? It's actually very rare that people stand up and say, "Yep, I love to be sold to," because I like to analyze all the methodologies they're going through
You and
and the
I we
psychology.
might be a bit weird, but we're off the spectrum. We're not the real thing. But you're totally right. No one wants to be sold to, but they love to buy. Better still, they like to make the most accurate, informed decisions.
Yes,
But people want to
yes.
make good, accurate, informed decisions. And that's your role. Your role, I'm saying it to your listeners now, and I'm sure you've backed up. Your role is not to sell anything to anyone.
Mm,
Your job is to help your buyer make good, accurate, and informed decisions that help them get what they want, whether it ends up being you or someone else. I swear if you do that, you will go a lot further in sales.
So just on that, St. John, because I fully concur and completely agree, right? Why is it then that we've got so many companies throwing sales training at sales organizations, which is all about go and sell, do the assumptive close, do the preemptive close, do the do the hard close,
Because they
sell,
don't
sell, sell,
understand,
sell.
they don't understand basic human psychology, which is
No.
basically people don't like being told what to do. And I think
Mm,
whether we talked about it in the last episode or not, as a recap, during COVID in Sydney, in Victoria, in New Zealand, in Canada, wherever you're listening to this, you had some pretty severe lockdowns, and we're all told, do not panic buy. Whatever you do, Darren, don't panic buy. What do we all go and do? Panic buy because we don't like being told what to do,
that's
especially by
it.
our highs and betters. So rather than doing something or telling, because it's that American phrase, telling ain't selling. It's a cliche, but we use the cliche because it's true. It's a truism.
Yes.
Telling isn't selling, asking, it's the power of the ask, but more importantly, it's the art of asking the question and mastering the conversation.
Mm.
So your conversation doesn't feel like a sales conversation. Because if it feels or looks or sounds like a sales conversation, bang, they're in the back of their brain and they've just shut shop on you.
Well, that's it. And if they feel there's a sales technique coming, or they feel as if the person is not genuine, they're just
Yeah.
angling for the close, then they're going to put up their objections and continue to
But
do
but
that.
to your earlier point, what happens is a lot of sales trainers, not all, there's some very good ones out there as well. They don't understand that you don't put a prospect through a process or force fit them like a cat, like in my world, like a Wagyu cattle or steer or Brahman cattle for
Mm.
a crusher. What you're doing is you're going to be adaptive and you're going to almost let them lead, but you're just using your questions like a directional device. So when
Yes.
you walk around the airport and you're going through Sydney Airport, they have arrows which are wayfinding to tell you where to go. The questions are exactly the same, but it's how you ask your questions, not just what the questions are. And the questions will immediately signal your intent if you're serving or you're selling because
Yes.
the brain is very intuitive because the caveman brain, we couldn't talk to each other 150,000 years ago. So we go, who is this bloke or who is this lady? And are they a friend or a foe? And we're looking at body language. And then eventually we then obviously could speak. And then we listen to paraverbal. And without sounding like Jeremy Minor or Chris Voss, who've got some good stuff out there, the way in which you ask your questions and the way in which your tone and your delivery, your intonation is as
Mm.
important as the questions because you can sound very judgmental, very
Yeah.
self-serving, and really very selfish. And they're
Mm.
just going to shut down on you. But if you take a different approach, which is a service-based mentality, serve to sell, being that buyer's assistant, you keep your buyer safe, you get in the right part of the brain, you're going to have a deeper, richer, longer conversation, which won't even sound like a sales conversation.
And the thing about that, St. John, is I often say to sales teams, your job is not to sell one thing. Your job is to create a relationship where potentially your buyer can buy multiple different things. So the
100%.
sale doesn't begin until after the sale is actually made.
100%.
So it's an interesting thing. A lot of sales trainers will look at the sales process, and companies will look at we've got this sales process, so we've got to take our customers through this sales process.
Mm.
I was actually talking to a chap the other night, and he was talking about he was doing some research and wanted to buy some AI technology for some
Mm.
of his clients. And he'd done all of the research. And that's the other thing people don't necessarily realize now. Your customers know more about the products and the services that are available in the marketplace, and they know more about you than you perhaps think they do. So
Mm.
they've made a pretty well, they've gone some way down the track of making a buying
Very much
decision
so.
before they even speak. And so
Yeah.
he said he was ready to buy this solution.
Mm. Mm.
And the last step in the process was they needed to have a conversation with somebody who was a representative from this selling organization. And it just so
Yeah.
happened to be the founder. And
Yeah.
his experience was the founder was operating according to his sales process,
Mm.
not operating according to the buying process. So guess what happened?
100%.
He talked himself out of the
What
deal.
a deal. Misalignment.
Complete misalignment.
And didn't read the room because what's happening is when we're more consumed serving our own needs rather than our buyers' needs, we miss it. And so, I mean, Daniel Pink, who's an amazing dude, and again, I'd love to get him on my podcast if he happens to be listening to yours, Darren, if you could send him my way. But he
I've got
talks
his
about
number. I'll just give him a text, mate.
beautiful, be awesome in Washington. Away we go. But he talks in that beautiful book, many of his books, To Sell is Human. He talks about this concept of attunement. And he said you need to be like a radio frequency, like dialed into the frequency of your buyer. And if you're not aligned, that's why I was talking about the buyer brain here. If you're not
Mm,
aligned to different parts of the brain and you can't literally read the room or read the signals, the reason you can't read the signals is because you're so consumed with serving your own needs, you're blind. And I'm sure you've done sales observation in your days. You're just looking there and going the rep, you're going, either shut up and stop talking, or those questions are terrible, or can you not read what the rubric, can you not see the signals? And you just want to sort of grab them, but you can't, or you
yeah,
might try and risk it, but I'm sure we've all been there.
we have. So I love this thing you talk about also. We need to learn to speak a different language, which is exactly the buyer's language.
Mm,
What do you say to companies or to sales leaders or salespeople to say, hang on, Sindri, you don't understand. I've got a really massive target and I'm under the pump from my sales director to hit a quarterly quota, a monthly quota. This
mm,
all sounds great, but mate, I've got to feed my family. I've got to pay my mortgage.
yeah.
I've got to
Yeah.
sell shit. Right?
Yeah. So if you sell shit, you will sell nothing. You'll sell shit. You'll sell zero. So selling shit doesn't sell shit. So it's also a shit way of selling. So we can milk this metaphor all day long. So what we have to do is if you sell the same, you get treated the same. And if you've got that pushy manager, well, that manager probably needs to go back to school and understand the psychology behind selling, which is buying, which is actually deciding and human nature and decision making, the psychology that we can go into deeper. And
Mm,
and the thing is, they don't understand that selling shit, and I know you were just using it facetiously, then literally puts the bar into the back of their brain because, like you said, out of your own mouth and your own words, no one likes being sold to. No one
mm,
likes being told what to do. Everyone wants to be, you can call it consultative sell, yes, challenger sell. I think those are all super valid. Spin selling, Neil Rackham, banned all these kind of models, and we all synthesize them. Ultimately, though, your customer needs to feel, because remember, they feel before they think. They're
mm,
feelers that think, they're not
mm,
thinkers that feel. They need to feel like they are in control. As soon as your brain thinks you're out of control, we're control freaks. Our brains are wired to keep us survive. So this is why
mm,
we're control freaks. So what I need to feel safe, and the way I feel safe is when I can predict what's going on. And the other thing is, Darren, sorry, long answer to a good question is when the brain is basically 95% of the time it runs on autopilot. Now, this blows literally, metaphorically, people's brains. So Danny Carmen, beautiful book here. If anyone wants to read it, good luck to them. Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. What a book, which won a Nobel Peace Prize in psychology for this concept of prospect theory or loss aversion. But one
okay.
of the things Danny Carmen talked about is he said that there's a system one and there's a system two brain. And I can bring it up and try and do two things at one time. But what it talks about is that the brain is fast and it's slow. It has two systems. And so when you meet someone for the first time, not only in the back of the brain, but you're also system one, your brain is predictive. The brain is a
Mm.
predictive pattern recognition machine. I'm looking for another book on, oh yeah, here we are, Andy Clark, The Experience Machine. So there you go. I'm just grabbing books, fortunately, just by my hand. And that talks about how the brain saves energy by predicting what's going to happen because otherwise it's got to fire up and it's like a computer drive. It's going to
Yeah,
overwhelm itself. So, that's the guts of it. And people just don't understand that, there are two parts of the brain. And it's basically, there we go, finally can do two things at once. Danny Carmen, system one brain, system two brain. A lot of people know this and some people don't. But for the
yeah,
listeners that don't, you'll be amazed. You think about it, when you drive, you're on autopilot. You've driven
totally.
today, Darren, I have. We were subconscious, it was unconscious, it was fast, and we weren't driving going, oh, we're driving, oh, I'm
Mm,
driving. You were thinking about something else, or you're doing
totally.
something else. But then when they changed the roadworks, or they change the interface of your internet banking or your energy or your gas or the supermarket layout, your brain just goes haywire. You're like, what do you mean? It was supposed to be here because it's literally predicting things, and that's because it saves energy because the brain,
Mm.
male or female, only weighs about 2% of body mass, but it uses 20% of the energy. So it's an energy miser. It's lazy. That's why it wants to predict things.
So with all that, if we go deeper into the psychology, because there'll be people listening to this and say, this sounds intuitively it sounds correct. And if people are really analyzing themselves and they're thinking about the last time they had a challenging conversation, and just think about how they were feeling, a lot of that back of the brain, midbrain, and top of the brain would kind of make sense to them.
Yeah.
But it's such a powerful concept for salespeople. For people who are wanting to improve their ability, so they want to move away from being a salesperson, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with being sales, right? So I say to people all the time, be proud of being in sales. It's just the way you've got to do it that you should be able to create high levels of credibility. What are some things that they could do? And it's just to take the sales training out of it because there's a lot of sales trainers will talk about, we're going to teach you the sales methodology, and this is how you do some
Yeah. Puppy dog
prospecting.
close, presumptive close, always be
That's
closing. This
right.
obsession on closing. We can maybe talk about closing later on. I'll bang up another slide here, which is useful. So the sales rep, I don't want you to be a salesperson. I want you to be a professional buyer's assistant. And
Yeah.
over time, you become a trusted advisor. Now, that comes from your intent and how you show up and your stance and your purpose. Your
Mm,
purpose is not to sell anything to everyone. I'm going to be like a broken record here. Your job is to help your buyers make good, accurate, and informed decisions, which make them feel safe in the decisions they're making. And then they own those decisions. Better still, Darren, they end up closing themselves. So, in sort of like if I want to get in really simple layman's language, you need to be more interested in the person in front of you than the product or service that you sell. And I
yep.
want you to develop curiosity. Curiosity is just a simple layman's term for psychology. The
Mm,
reason I understand this stuff is because I'm curious, I like to know. It also is a competitive advantage, and I love teaching it. And when people get more curious about the world around them, they get more curious about themselves. And if they can tune into themselves and then improve their relationship with themselves, they can improve their relationship with others. Because if you can tune into yourself and spot the signals, you are very, very capable of doing that. And it's almost like a superpower. So I often
mm,
say curiosity is literally a sales superpower. So be a student of psychology, but don't get buzzed up around you got to read all these textbooks and these crazy books that we're picking up. All you're doing is just try and understand the basics of human behavior and the laws of human nature and study them. I mean, I would read anything by Robert Greene with an
mm,
E at the end. He's amazing, with his mastery books and 48 Laws of Power and all those things. Just be curious
mm.
about human behavior and watch people, observe people, ask more questions. Curious people ask lots of questions, not because they're annoying, but where they come. It's like you ask questions because we know you're being genuine, and authentic about it. Because
Yeah.
you're insatiably curious. You want to learn more, and every
Yeah.
time you talk to someone, a guest or you're guesting or you're training, you're learning as much from them as they're learning from you, and vice versa. It's an opportunity to learn if you're curious.
And the key thing there, it has to be genuine.
There
And you
really
mentioned
must
something
be.
really important before, and that is intention. So, from a selling perspective, yes, your role is to sell. That's from the company's perspective, but we want them to be a professional buyer's assistant,
Yeah.
which means you need to be able to guide your customer to make an informed purchasing decision, which means
Yeah.
you've got to start talking the buyer's language,
Yeah.
which presupposes you've got to get really good at asking good, curious based questions, not that's going to feed the narrative to retrofit your product into their perceived
Spot on.
needs. You've got
Spot
to
on.
take your product and put it to the side.
Yep.
I've actually said to sales teams, hey, your target, your challenge for the next week is to run all of your sales meetings, your customer meetings, without mentioning your product once.
Such good exercise.
And they
Such a good
say,
exercise.
Jesus, what the hell am I going to talk about?
Yeah, what am I going to talk about? All I've got is my product show up, throw up, feature creature routine. Yeah, great thing. But I mean, it's the advice probably we're both giving it in different articulations. Is if you could just be more interested in the person in front of you than your product, service, and sell. Often, I think with I'm going to use a driving analogy here because I'm a terrible one. Rural posts always pop out in the middle of nowhere. I'm driving the bloody back box and the boondocks, and you do the benefit of your braking the last few meters. I think it's the same with your sales conversations. So what happens is you're talking, and you're not. If the listeners are taking notes, obviously if they're driving, we don't want them to do that. If they're understanding what we're putting down here, is you're not interested in the product or service you sell. You're more interested in the person in front of you.
Yeah.
So most people fall in love with their product. I want you to
Yes.
fall in love with your prospect. So
Yes.
what it is then if I'm talking to Darren, we'll be talking, and probably only towards the very end, we'll say, look, Darren, based on what we've spoken about, I think there's a couple of things here. There's this option, that one, and I'll give you the reasons for what. And then what I'll do is I'll leave that with you. Let me know when you want to follow up. Yeah, what are your thoughts? and who else is potentially involved in this, and kind of how we make it stack up for them. I mean, I can start going through buyer committee and building business case questions, but probably the best advice I was given was this, which is criticism will close doors.
Yeah.
Criticism is a cancer. It is literally a cancer. Curiosity will open more doors. I can say from personal experience, just from the way I was raised on a pretty hard working farm, is there was a lot of criticism in our family and a lot of high standards, and that sort of probably plagued me for a number of years. But it was only really in the last 15 years I've developed curiosity. And when I developed, as you say, genuine, authentic curiosity, more doors open for me. And I
Mm.
got into different rooms with different people. And as a result, I can literally say my curiosity is correlated with my earning income. And the more curious you are, the more money you make.
Mm.
But you've got to start with yourself because sales success is an inner game, which we talked about obviously in episode 1.
Yeah. And I love that because often people will use the terminology curiosity killed the cat.
It didn't. It didn't. It fed the cat. The cat got fed. Yeah.
But it's not a real truism in sales because when you think about it, and you mentioned it before, the adage that people like to buy from those they know, like, and trust, right? So you've got to build credibility. So if your customer feels comfortable with you and you've helped create that psychologically safe environment where you are genuinely curious and leading them through, I guess, unpacking what for them is a challenge that they want to try and solve, then that's not selling. That's just guiding them and helping them almost be a bit of a guide or be a support mechanism
Yeah, but
to
that's why we
help.
say buyers. That's why we say buyer's assistant. I always
Yeah.
say your conversations should not sound like sales conversations. So obviously, I have a nifty AI tool that goes through the sales call and breaks it down, and it's pretty cool because you listen to it, and all humans, we've got these blind spots and biases, and it's really hard to observe ourselves. And I tell you, it gives me some pretty filthy scores as well sometimes. Like I'm in the red, not even the orange or the green. And it's like, what are you doing? And I train this every day, but you know, the conversation should feel natural and normal. It should flow. If it feels forced, then you're doing it wrong. If it
Yeah.
flows and it feels natural and normal, you're doing it right. And the biggest thing I get with my guys, who obviously, are selling the farmers is like my farmers are talking so much longer now. St. John, you're such a bugger. You're making me bloody late for every other meeting. Like I can't get them to stop talking. I said, well, do you want them to not talk, or do you want them to talk a lot? I think it'd be more because this is the truth. The sale is made in the conversation.
Yes.
Sales not made in the demonstration, quotation, estimation, God forbid, PowerPoint presentation. So all the people that are, the tech guys or tech bros, as we call them, they're in love with their product and they sharpen for up and they get their PowerPoint and they show their demo. It's like, put the demo away, put the PowerPoint away, put the presentation away, keep it in the bag, have a conversation and start. I'll give your listeners a great question they can ask. If they're selling to a buying committee or a panel of buyers, what you do,
Mm.
there's a lot of psychology to this question, is I'd say to you, Darren, hey, Darren, thanks so much for making time and facilitating getting everyone in the same room. I know it's a big thing, so appreciate that. Hey, Darren, how best do you want to use the time we've got? What would make this conversation most
Mm.
useful for you? Now, you know why I'm asking that question in that way, because I framed it so we can talk
Yeah.
about framing. I mean, there's so much we can talk about we don't have time for. But I framed it because then you feel like you're in control
Yes.
and you're leading, but you're not because I asked the question, but I'm then surfacing your reasons to qualify, disqualify for priority and urgency and all the things we teach to go, what do you want to talk about?
Mm.
As opposed to me go dog and pony show, oh, let me show you PowerPoint, oh, look at my fancy agri-tech and everything else. And like the sales lost in the first 30 seconds. And we've got this obsession with serving our own needs and then we don't close anything.
No.
It's ridiculous.
It is insane. It is insane. And I fully believe that most sales teams are being trained the wrong way.
Oh,
Being
I
trained the
think
wrong
I
way,
think
right?
I think it is fundamentally, hideously. I shake my head here. The the burnt chars and broken bones and damage, collateral damage, let alone monetary financial damage of these happy clappy one and done kooky wooey sales trainers coming in, I'm sure there's some good in what they train. I'm sure some good basic stuff, but they don't understand the basic psychology. It doesn't matter how happy clappy you get about ABC and BANT and everything else. I'll give you one example. Traditional sales training, and I think you and I would agree on this, is obsessed on closing.
Mm,
I'm not obsessed about closing. I'm obsessed about opening.
hmm.
So basically, when everyone says I can't close or my guys can't close, they can't close anything. I said, that's because the prospect's already closed off. It's a physical impossibility. Your door behind you, Darren. I always say this to people on my calls. Could you close that door behind you? You go, well,
Yeah.
it's already bloody closed, mate. Well, if it's closed, you can't close it. So the way you close something is by keeping it open, and the way you keep something open is by keeping it safe.
Mm,
So this is probably the bumper sticker. This is the thing that I will write about more and I've blogged about before, but I've got these little syngonisms as they're known. I probably just make them up. Most closing problems are opening problems. And so what happens is your intent, which we've just talked about, how you show up.
yeah.
If you are showing up as a salesperson, then they're going to be closed off and you can't close them because they're going to
Mm,
have back your brain. If you showed up as a buyer's assistant,
yeah.
genuinely, authentically, not force flashery, peeing in their pocket, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but Jenny said, I want to find out if we can help you or not, Darren. And I've got a few questions to ask, and it'll only be a few, it won't take long, and then we can decide if we need to have another conversation or not. And if we
Mm,
don't, I'll point you somewhere where I can, and we'll part as friends. How does that sound? And
yeah.
then you go, great. So I've already disarmed you because you're like, this is different. Salespeople don't talk to me normally like this. Salespeople normally just go, right, okay, we're going to get on a call and we're going to work out if there's a fit between us. And, and I can sort of put on funny accents or whatever. I'm not mimicking any nationalities, but, that sort of, that click and whir, force you down a funnel process.
Yes.
Like, be human, like connect, open. And the thing is, if you've got closing problems, I guarantee you, if I listen to your calls or observe you, it's because you have opening problems.
Yes. Because you haven't created that psychological safety. You've spoken
Boom.
about your product. You haven't asked the questions. You haven't shown genuine intent and genuine curiosity. And the other thing I'll say is you haven't detached or disassociated from the outcome you're trying to get.
Absolutely love that. We talk about developing the detachment muscle. So it's like going to the sales gym
Mm,
or the mind gym. And we say, right, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to detach from the outcome and I want you to attach to the process. Now,
hmm.
that's not the process that we talked about forcing them through, but there are some boxes, there are some things you need to tick. You need to tick things like priority and urgency. Can we help them? Have we accurately identified the problem? How much priority and urgency do they attach to it? What's the impact implication of that if they don't get that?
Yeah.
Am I talking to the right person? Who's the buying committee? How do we build the business case? And then how do we advance the sale? So there are some steps you've got to go through, but if you are so attached to the outcome, it's like the Olympist or the rower. They're focused on the podium, but they're not focused on the oar stroke. So if you're a rower, which I'm not, but we know rowers. New Zealand's got some pretty good ones. Aussie's got some pretty good ones when they don't lay down. And like, sorry, I mean that's really rough. I think there was a very valid reason why she was lying down. She's absolutely knackered and spent. But you got to focus on the oar stroke. You got to be in the boat.
Yes.
So the process, I always say to my students, the process protects.
Mm,
Because if you look after the process looks after you, and the outcome will look after itself. So look after the outcome will look after itself.
correct. Absolutely spot on. Now, there's one thing I wanted to add to this, or just sort of
Please.
summarize, because people might be listening to this and thinking, does this mean, Darren and St. John, that as a salesperson, as a buyer's assistant,
Mm,
I relinquish control over the process, right? Because it might be they're thinking, well, if I give everything to the buyer, if I'm generally curious, then the outcome could take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Well, it'll take as long as it needs to take. But the thing is, you're still in control, but you've created a level of psychological safety to the point where now the buyer is feeling a lot more connected with you. There's probably a higher level of trust. They're more likely to lean in and look at the solution and have
mm,
a genuine business conversation with you. So you do have control over how you can lead them to that decision. And we're not
yeah,
saying you don't not close,
yeah,
but you give them enough information and maybe enough prodding,
Yeah.
to allow them to make a decision that is comfortable for where they're at.
Yes, and I know exactly where you're going there. So what I again say to my students is I say this. So here's another syngenism for you. You need to sell slow to sell fast.
Mm,
So what it is yes, you're going to nudge them, but ultimately they're going to nudge themselves because you're going to qualify and clarify the level of priority and urgency
yeah.
they attach to receiving that particular specific outcome that's unique for them. And ultimately, if you do that right and you create the right conditions, they end up closing themselves.
Mm,
But the problem is, salespeople make sales so freaking complicated and they make it so hard because they get in their own way. So if you
yes.
get out your own way, get out of your own ego and your self-interest and your self-worth and go, actually, I'm just here to literally serve and support this buyer on their journey. I'm going to ask them some questions to qualify and clarify if we can help or not. And if your sales cycles take longer, so be it. But the thing is, the only reason you're getting pressure from your manager with your sales cycles taking longer because you haven't got enough bloody prospects in your pipeline.
Yeah.
So you can be patient when you have enough prospects in your pipeline, and you can take as long as you bloody want.
Yeah.
But ultimately, funny enough, the slower you sell, the faster you sell. So you sell slow to sell fast. It's counterintuitive. Everything I teach, Darren, is counterintuitive, and it's
Well,
contradictory, which is hard for people to get their heads around.
but the thing is, St. John, when they get it, when they can actually understand that this is about psychology and it's about being that buyer's assistant,
Yeah,
not only will you find that more customers and prospective customers will be leaning into you, what that also means is there's a high probability that the products and the services, the solutions you're selling will probably be higher margin.
yeah,
It's going to be more sticky, so they're
yeah,
likely to hang around. They're also likely to repurchase. They're
yeah,
likely to now recommend others because there's a
100%.
trust transfer happen because you've looked after
100%.
them. And so this is the long game.
Yeah,
So
long game.
if you're prepared to stay the course, and maybe for some salespeople listening to this, maybe what you need to also start to do is educate your sales leader because sometimes the sales leader was put into a position of sales leadership because they've come from the old school of
We talked about that
always
when we
be
last
closing,
spoke.
baby.
100%. Well, look, what I would do when I was selling, I'd do this. And it's like, well, that doesn't work because, well, I think the world's 2026 now, right? You talked about information asymmetry. Like that's a big posh word for the buyer has more information now than almost
Yeah.
the seller. So it's
Hmm.
actually seller beware, not buyer aware, which again, Dan Pink talks about in that beautiful book of his. And so your job, as you say, when we spoke earlier, like I think the Gartner research or the Forrester research says that basically buyers are 57% of the way through their buying journey before they reach up and actually talk to someone and they dread talking to a sales rep. We know why they dread talking to a sales rep because they think they're going to get sold to. So
That's
it's really
right.
simple. You have to be everything that they're not. And that's then how you become the buyer's assistant. And again, I don't think it's a sort of a unique idea, but it's like if you actually just help your buyers make good, accurate, informed decisions, you're going to make more sales because you don't make any sales until someone's buys.
That's it. That's it. And through that process, you're going to differentiate yourself against all your competitors
100.
because all your competitors are doing the old school methodology
Well,
of
they get more
hey, sell at all
desperate.
costs.
Sell, sell, sell. You got to go
Yeah.
and do this, and I'm going to win on price and everything else. I mean, I think we misunderstand that, particularly in my world, farming, they've got very, very strong instincts because they're remote. So their antennae and the bullshit radar is up really, really high, and they're super tuned in. They're reading you. Literally, they're taking all of you in, all your body language, your paraverbal, not just what you're saying, but your nonverbal and your
Yeah.
paraverbal. And if you're not fully congruent with what you're saying and you don't know your stuff, they're going to poke and test you. We call it the sniff test. They literally will try you out and go, "Hey, boy, tell me about bloody these XR1, blah 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 blah." And then if you bullshitted them, you're gone. You're
Yeah.
down the gate, and you won't get back in there for years.
Yeah.
I mean, farmers aren't like a CTO or a CMO in the city. Like they're going to be there, hopefully, for generations. And you stuff it up with a farmer, like they're not going to forget that, and they got very, very long memories. Ask any banks that have not been very kind to farmers in the harder
Yeah.
years, and they will banish you for not only seasons or years or decades, and sometimes it's generations. They go, "I
Yeah.
will never work with that color bank ever again," or
Yes.
"I'm not going to work with that bank just because the way you." It's it's all about how you make people feel, and I think people think that's touchy feely, but you need to really, really be tuned into how you make people feel in a conversation. And if it feels like a sales conversation, then you know you're doing it wrong.
And that comes back to the quote you had before. We're a feeling body with the ability to think, or something similar
That's
to
right.
that, right?
Yeah, I
So
know it's a bit of a tongue twister.
yeah,
So I even have to look it up myself because it's such a bloody hard one to say. But when we come to the buying brain, what we're talking about here, it's this one from Mr. Antonio Damasio, and he says we are not thinking machines that feel, we're feeling machines that think. For
yeah,
humans, let alone farmers, I mean, farmers are huge feelers because they're very
yeah,
emotional.
yeah,
Because when you sell something to a farmer or a grower, he or she, they've got to live with that purchase day in, day out. When they come out of their house in the morning, that's the first thing might be that they see. And it's not like in the city where you can just bugger off after 18 months, jump to the next job. Hey, Stu from recruitment agency, go and get me another job and
yeah.
bounce, bounce, bounce. You know, there's higher stakes when you're selling to rural, but I think it's important for any sector to understand this kind of psychology.
And I love that. And the thing you mentioned just before in terms of being really conscious on how you want to make your customer feel, which means you've got to do your planning.
Yeah.
And I'll often give clients like a 5 minute planner before they have a sales call, and there'll be
Yeah.
three things on it. It's the think, the feel,
Perfect.
the do.
Love it.
And I get them to spend more time on the feel because understanding that if you get your customer to feel and you insert the feeling you want, whether it's
Mm.
comfort, inspired, whatever the case might be, then you can tailor your narrative and your questioning to that. And if you can walk out having your customer feel good about having the interaction, they're more likely to engage in a second conversation and they're more likely to stay involved in whatever the buying process is that you're going to take them through.
100%. And to back up what you're saying is you want to make your conversations count. You don't get many opportunities these days. Everyone's so freaking busy.
Mm,
So if you have that first conversation is crucial. So that planning and that preparation, those frameworks you talk about, Darren, are absolutely essential. But if they feel safe with you, they will tell you more. If someone's
mm,
not telling you much,
yeah,
they've got the brakes on, which is what we call the sympathetic nervous system. But
yes,
if they've got their foot on the gas, we're on the parasympathetic. It's what we call the blue zone versus the red zone. If you're in the red, they're banging the brakes on. So it's a stop, start, stalled, awkward, just kind of crap, shitty conversation. It's shallow, it's superficial, and it's short. That's not
yeah,
what we want. We want long, deep, rich meetings where literally they're telling us everything, and your
mm,
reward is they will tell you things that they won't tell your opposition because of how you made them feel or not feel.
yeah,
So I think that's really crucial for listeners to understand whatever sector you sell in, focus on the feeling
yeah,
because you're selling feelings, not just financial.
totally. Because that then comes back to the fact that people are feeling machines that think, and therefore the
Yeah.
decision making is going to be highly slanted towards how they feel.
Yeah.
And
So
it's not,
we all make decisions emotionally. You think about buying a house, it should be the most rational decision. I
yeah,
bet you, well, if it's my wife, she's like, I love this place, we're getting it. I'm like, shh, don't tell him that. Don't tell him that. He's like, oh, it's got a great feel in the indoor. I love the light and the flow and everything else. Like, I mean, I'm being facetious, but we all buy houses based on feelings. I
yes,
mean, if you into your cars, you'll buy your cars with certain badge. That's feelings. If we were all just rational beings, we'd all just buy Toyota Corolla cars. But we
that's
don't
right.
because we buy cars because of the feeling and the status and difference and social standing. So we are complicated. We are predictably irrational. And the sooner you start working out human behavior, the sooner you get better at sales.
I love that. And as you're talking about Toyota, I'm thinking their catchphrase, "Oh, what a feeling," right? And I don't know about you, but Toyotas don't have any feeling. I've had
They
so many
don't.
tire
But I
cars,
tell
they're
you
just
what,
beige.
I tell you what, they bloody start every time. And that's why
True.
so many farmers drive them. And same with the Ranges and you've got your Dodgers now and your Rams and everything else. But a Toyota just doesn't not start. It's
No,
amazing.
it is. It is. So, St. John, I'm conscious of time. People listening to this, and there'll be a salesperson or maybe a few salespeople who are taking in what we're talking about and saying intuitively this makes sense, but I'm not sure how I can make this transition. So, if you were talking to a group of salespeople right now who have been traditionally taught the old method of sales,
Mhm.
and we want to start to change their psychology and start them to start thinking about the language of the buyer, is there a couple of specific things that you would suggest that they start to think about or at least implement to
Yeah.
make that transition?
Great question. I want you to be a sponge, not a rock. And I want you to empty the vessel so I can fill it back up. So what's happening is sometimes, there's stuff, the tank or the brain is full of stuff that's not useful. So when your computer shits itself, you
Mm.
have to defrag it and you have to empty it and you have to get rid of the files. I want you to delete a lot of files and make room for the new files and the new folders. So I need you to be a sponge, not a rock, and I need you to be curious, not critical, because when you're a sponge, you're going to absorb it all. And so I want you to think about the mindset and how you like to be sold to. And I bet the way you like to be sold to should be the way that you sell to others.
Yeah.
So, you basically sell the way you buy. So don't put on this new personality or persona. We talked about it before the recording is be you, you do you, you be original, you be the human, the good human that you are, good humans that
Mm.
we are, and the people that listen to it, and show them how damn good you are. But that's not like, tap dancing your way through and your dog and pony PowerPoint. This is just literally having a great conversation, being ultimately focused on the prospect, ask them good questions that serve their needs, not your own,
Mm.
and detaching from the outcome. And I tell you, it will work. We have countless case studies, but we don't need the case studies because it's already proven through the science of psychology.
Yes.
People don't like being sold to, they don't like being told what to do. And the more desperate people you get, the harder it becomes for you and the better you need to become. Because when they get worse, Darren, I say to my students, you have to get better. You have no choice.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And when you're having those conversations, please make sure you listen. Don't just think about your
Oh,
next question.
oh. I mean, two ears, one mouth. It's a common thing, but like, yeah, obviously take notes. Even some people say, oh, I don't want to take notes. I think taking notes is a sign of respect that you're paying attention. You might just say,
Oh,
hey, do
absolutely.
you mind if I just, because I mean, taking notes as you and I have been talking,
Yeah.
and then you can refer back to it. But tune in. So, attentive listening or empathetic listening, and I'm not an expert on that. I'm probably could always be a lot better at it, but just really tune in, be aligned to your buyer, pay attention, sell slow to sell fast, ask great questions, be curious, keep them in the middle part of the brain, and please turn up with sincere journey and curiosity as a buyer's assistant. It's the best advice I can give you.
I love that. And what a great way to finish. I'm going to use this, and maybe I'll use this as a title for this episode. It's we don't sell, we serve. And if we can do that and do all the things you've spoken about today, then not only will individuals significantly improve their ability to be more effective in sales, but we can help lift the entire sales industry. Oh,
Amen. Amen, brother. I mean, like, I think the mission I'm on is to restore the respect of rural sales professionals all over the world.
mm,
Because at the moment, the way we're training them creates disrespect and they're dismissed and devalued. And if they want to be that aspired, trusted advisor, we've got to be adding more value. The way we're training our people is fundamentally broken and wrong at the moment. And I
yeah,
think this is why all the good work you do here, Darren, with your good guests on here, bring a different perspective, different philosophies, different rationales. Hopefully, we can help a few folk along the way become exceptional.
brilliant. Love that. St. John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Just for people, I'm going to make an assumption now that perhaps people who listen to this right now have not listened to the previous one. So if you haven't, please go back and listen to it. But where can they get access to you? Where's the best place for them to
Yeah,
connect?
look, if anything made any moderate sense or a minuscule of intellect about what we've been talking about today, best place is LinkedIn. There's
Yeah.
only one Sinjin because it's a very unusual name, and I know Darren's wonderful team will put that in the show notes. If you're keen on chewing on a bit of our content, we've got a wonderful podcast called The Rural Sales Show. We actually talk a lot around psychology there, so don't be put off by the fact it says rural in the title. And we have sports psychologists, some of the best sales guys and girls. We just had an amazing guy, Mark Hunt. We have All Blacks on there. Sorry, Aussies. We have All Blacks. We have sports psychologists, but we have some of the best sales people around the world that come on my show. And I think it's like you, Darren. We talked about it before here. It's the generosity. It's the
Mm,
intent to serve. And those people recognize you and I and will come on to shows like yours and ours, which we
yeah.
would never, ever normally be able to access. And the thing is, the better guests we can get on the show, the more we can serve people, and it sort of
Correct.
snowballs from there. So it's all in the ask, really. So yeah,
It
that
is.
that podcast's great. And then yeah, last one. Sorry, sounds like a bloody advertorial. Dub ruralsalessuccess.com. And again, don't be put off that it's rural. If you are in rural, yeah, we'd love to hear from you, have a chat with you. But there's books in there, emails, blogs, everything. Help yourself. Heaps of free resources. And I have a new AI tool that you can take for a spin as well called Field Coach. So that might help
Love
some
it.
people.
Love it. Mate, I'll put all of that in the show notes. And certainly I'd encourage people to check you out, because even though it does say rural, what you talk about applies to any industry anywhere in the world. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kudos to you for the great work you're doing, and thank you so much for being a guest yet again on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. Keep being
Yeah,
awesome.
I'd just say ditto to you, kudos to you as well, Darren, for all the work you're doing. I think, the good guys and girls that are, trying to turn this around and make sales a noble profession again, a respected profession. More power to them.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.